This Week in Defense News with Vago Muradian.
Good morning and welcome to This Week in Defense News. I'm Vago Muradian. We're honored today to have as our only guest General George Casey, the 36th Chief of the United States Army. From 2004 to 2007, he commanded all U.S. and Allied forces in Iraq. First, let's take a look at the many challenges facing the Army in this era of persistent conflict. At war continuously since 9/11, concerns are growing that the Army is wearing out. Of a force of 556,000, nearly half of the Army is deployed or stationed worldwide, with 150,000 in Iraq and Afghanistan. Repeated year-long combat tours have strained soldiers and their families. Post-traumatic stress is widespread.
Present! Halt!
And soldier suicide rates have hit record highs. Experienced young officers are quitting, leaving a shortage of field-grade leaders. The Army's promoting senior non-commissioned officers, a move some fear will leave a void in critical enlisted leadership. The Army has added 70,000 troops to its ranks since 2004, with plans to add 22,000 more over the next 3 years. A full withdrawal from Iraq by 2011 should allow the service to surge 20,000 additional troops to Afghanistan. But will that be enough to rest weary combat units, given the Army projects maintaining today's deployment levels for another 18 years? General Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vago. Nice to be here.
Sir, if you include National Guard and the reserves, the Army is more than 1 million people. But the brunt of the fighting has fallen on the active duty force, which is about half that size. Since the Army itself projects that you're going to have 100,000 or more people deployed on an annual basis for many, many more years to come, is the Army big enough to handle everything that's going to be thrown at it?
If we take that 1.1 million person Army and have continued access to the Guard and Reserve that we have today, I would say to you, given what I know now, yes, it is. If we properly organize, train, and equip it, and we have been moving toward that. And I listened to some of the lead-in to this, and I know it's a big question in folks' mind is how far can you stretch the Army before it breaks? And I've been saying since the summer of 2007, after I went around the Army with my wife, talking to soldiers, leaders, families, trying to get a sense of really where we were. And I've been saying that the Army's out of balance, that we're so weighed down by our current commitments that we can't do the things that we know we need to do to sustain this force for the long haul and to prepare ourselves to do other things. And we have been working for the last 2.5+ years on a plan to get ourselves back in balance by 11. And we've made pretty good progress. And the big question I get all the time is, how can you absorb another 20,000 soldiers deployed given the state of the Army? And what people don't see is, one, we're 40,000 soldiers larger than we were in 2007. Right. And we're going to continue to add another 17,000 here over the next 2 years. Secondly, we have been transforming ourselves since 2004 from a very good Cold War force to a force relevant for the 21st century. Just quick examples, and then I'll stop here. But we've reduced our armor brigades by about 40%. We've reduced our artillery brigades by about 70%. Logistics supporting units to those formations by 60%. And we've doubled the amount of civil affairs and psychological operations.
But at base, the question is whether or not you can increase that dwell time and the time between deployments, and you want to increase that to a year.
We want to increase it to 2 years.
You want to increase it to 2 years. Do you still have enough people, and isn't this contingent on too many wild cards, like, for example, you are going to be finished up in Iraq in time, or you're not going to have another commitment suddenly rise up and bite you in the bottom?
Yeah. Besides the growth and the transformation, the third element of why we can meet this is the drawdown in Iraq. And we have about 100,000 soldiers in Iraq today. We'll be less than 50,000 soldiers there by August of this year. And so what happens is when you lay the Afghan deployment out over the Iraq drawdown, we really don't have substantially more forces deployed than we do today. And today we are continuing to build the time the soldiers spend at home. Now, the impact of the deployment to Afghanistan is that we won't meet the targets we hope to meet in 11. 1 year out, 2 years back for the active force, 1 year out, 4 years back for the Guard and Reserve. We'll get there for 70% of the active force, 80% of the Guard and Reserve. The rest will get there in 12.
Do you think that the 22,000 temporary increase in end strength would ever become, do you want those to become a permanent addition to the force?
Right now, no. But it's a hedge, frankly, and we'll review this with the Secretary of Defense probably by around the middle of this year. 40% of our budget is personnel, and if the drawdown in Iraq goes and we're out of Iraq completely by 11, we probably can meet the commitments that I see coming at us with that 1.1 million person force, and as you know, personnel costs not only in the military but in the civilian sector are rising. And we don't want a big hollow army. We want an army that is the right size, that we can organize, train, equip, and support the soldiers and their families with the money that we have.
Is there a fear that the Army is breaking, as some people fear it is? And what are the metrics and the signs that you're tracking to gauge the health of the force?
This is something that we watch, as you can imagine, very, very closely. And we do that with our eyes wide open because we know that these indicators that we see are lagging indicators. And when I first came to this job, I called one of my predecessors, Shai Meyer, who was the chief in 1980, who went to Congress and said the Army's hollow. I said, Shai, how do you tell? He said, George, you can't. There's a thin red line out there that you'll cross. And as hard as you try, you'll be on the other side when you realize it. So we've been watching it very closely. You can imagine we look at recruiting and retention, which are positive. And I would tell you, it's a mixed bag out there. The signs aren't all negative. Remember, again, recruiting and retention are both very, very positive.
And the economy obviously has been helping you out on that front.
The lead-in mentioned suicides. There's no question that our suicide rates have continued to increase. We've lost an average of about 18 soldiers more every year since 2004 to suicide. And we have a very active program to deal with that. And we have another active program called Comprehensive Soldier Fitness that we started in October for soldiers, families, and civilians to give them the skills in advance to deal with the challenges of these repeated deployments. So we look at it very hard. We're stretched. I've just come back from a trip around the world visiting soldiers, families, deployed, not deployed. I'm amazed at the continued resilience and commitment of these soldiers. And we watch very carefully the scope of these deployments so that we don't break it.
So you're satisfied that you neither have to get bigger, nor are you in danger of breaking the force?
Again, we based on where we are today, I believe we can handle the challenges I see with an army of about 1.1 million soldiers. And what we've been asked to do in Afghanistan with the drawdown in Iraq, I believe that is executable without substantially increasing stress on the force.
Let me ask you one question. Helicopters are critical in Afghanistan. That's obviously just moving around the country. It's vital. You created a new aviation brigade in order to handle that load. Will you need to create another aviation brigade, and where do you get the people in order to do that?
Aviation, as you know, as you suggest, is one of the more stretched and demanded capabilities that we have. We have had an aviation study ongoing for about 8 or 9 months now. I think it has gone back and looked at the way we've organized our aviation brigades, and we've already added more medical evacuation helicopters to the organization. But that organization was developed back in 2002, 2003. We know a lot more, and we've made huge strides with unmanned systems. And so we're looking at integrating more unmanned systems into these aviation brigades to leverage those capabilities that they have. And this is something that's tied to the 11 budget, so I can't speak to specifics.
Okay.
But in general, we probably could use another aviation brigade. It might not look like the ones we have today, but we probably could use another one to lessen the impact on our aviators.
And stay tuned. We'll have more with General George Casey, Chief of Staff of the United States Army, in just a minute. You're watching This Week in Defense News.